Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions on a sunny Monday here in the UK, 4 p.m. BST. The good Dr. Ellis Whitehead is back, and of course, Brent Zahradnik. How are we doing, fellas?
Doing well. Hope you guys all are doing well too.
Yep, all good this
fairly well
end.
here. No complaints.
Brent, do you want to just give the audience a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, sure. I've been in Amazon advertising since 2015, and have also since then run an agency called AMZ Pathfinder, and we work with North American and EU, companies selling on Amazon. And here to talk about naming and setup of structure. Some real nerdy stuff. Let's dive in.
I know it sounds on the surface there isn't a huge amount to go into, but we've made some notes here. There's quite a lot of stuff to cover, which we'll go in depth on. Ellis, little intro from you, please.
Also been in Amazon PPC since 2015 and working with Danny with our ad agency, Databril. And I would say the topic is one that definitely makes a huge difference in how much control you can have on your PPC and how good the statistics are that you're getting back. So if PPC is important to you, this is something to know about.
Yeah, sounds good. Right, so let's just kick it off. Let's start with the basics. Why clear naming of campaigns and structure is extremely important as well, not just for self-managed campaigns, but obviously as an agency for clients to understand as well. Kicking off with you, Brent.
Yeah, sure. So this is, of course, taken from my perspective, running an agency, but also that of my team members who have given a tremendous amount of input over the years and have tweaked our system for naming. And the way we're trying to think very, very often is like at scale. We have clients that have hundreds, sometimes thousands of SKUs. So coming up with a system that is easily kind of repeatable and works at a great number of products is really important for us. So I would say naming and structure are kind of inextricably linked. Inextricable, that's a word, I think.
Yep.
You can't separate them from each other. So basically, legibility and quick identification of efforts at a good scale. When you're searching around for products, whether it's in Seller Central or the reports that you pull out or third-party software, clients, they want to go in their account and look for stuff, and they have questions about things. And sometimes you need to tweak the naming a little bit for their taste, but that leaves them kind of reassured. And essentially what we're trying to do with naming is make it easy to navigate, make it easy to understand, and put a lot of information in the campaign, ad group, names, and then also make it so anyone on the team can understand someone else's structure. So, if Sammy from my team has an account and then Marco has to come in and look at it, he's not going to be confused and say like, well, Sammy's using some weird naming system that I've never seen before. It should be immediately familiar to him as another team member.
Yeah, exactly. So it's your team as well. If anyone needs to take time off, as humans do, then someone else has got to be able to jump into that account, whether it's based on an SOP or not. There should be a familiar structure for that anyone can understand to go in and isolate and take a look. I'll say some quick hellos and then I'll get your comments here as well. Ellis Savelle says hello from Singapore. Saibi is back. Good afternoon. Sahel saying hello, gents. Argo is here, says hello. So same to you, Ellis. Do you want to add on to what Brent is just saying there about the naming structure there?
Well, from our side, we do it somewhat differently. We just the naming structure is completely programmed, so you can't we can't even go in and change it. And so it's a very systematic naming structure, but it's not. We'd actually never. I almost never look at individual campaigns. So we evaluate the data on the much more on the keyword level. And so just because of that, I don't give any thought to naming other than, how we just originally programmed it. What we do name though, and this is a big part of probably what Brent's also talking about, is we want, we have ways in which we name groups of products. And those kind of groups of product names do go into the campaign as well. And then since it's systematic, different kinds of campaigns, they have different suffixes and stuff.
Right.
That makes sense. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about the base structure. We've got to naming. Ellis, do you want to kick off the base structure, starting with keyword bids, etc.?
Well, let's see. I guess to explain why it is that I think of campaign structure the way I do, it makes sense to say what I think would be ideal.
Yes.
So Amazon's campaign structure is very far from what I think an ideal campaign structure would be. And so we have to work with what they have, but to explain why we do what we do, understanding what would be, in my opinion, the right way to do it could make sense. So the right way to do it would be if we had, like, you can imagine a spreadsheet. Let's say we have 2 spreadsheets or 1 spreadsheet with 2 worksheets on it. And in one spreadsheet, you just have columns for column or keyword, match type, the SKU, and in the simple cases, then the bid. And then the others, another spreadsheet would be for your budgets. And there you can, I won't go into what columns would be in there, gets maybe more complicated than necessary for something that doesn't actually exist. You would be able to like group which SKUs should have which maximum budgets or which keywords if you have special keyword campaigns. And so this way, but the most important part is just that you have a keyword, a match type, a SKU, and a bid. So that's the basic concept that we're working with. And it can, you can take it further from there, make it more sophisticated, but that's the basic level.
Yeah, cool. Brent? So, sorry, Ellis, were you going to still add more?
Well, that was just talking about what I see as being the underlying data structure that should be there.
Let's elaborate on what you're saying, and then we'll bring it over to Brent so we're not jumping around too much. Because obviously running an agency which is more technology-led rather than manual-led in some cases, there's different structures, people work in different ways. Yes. So for the audience to understand is that they're not necessarily going to be able to personally work on the same structure as we do at the agency. Right, but you need to understand the clarity and the difference between how things are managed. So the idea is, with Brent coming on and you doing this, it shows different areas of ways and things, how they work, and people's different approaches. So I'll let you to elaborate there, and then I'll bring you back in, Brent, after, if that's okay.
Okay, I have questions for him too, because I like this idea. This is very exciting.
Cool. And then there's certain limitations that we have to deal with in the Amazon campaign structures and size limits. So for example, you're limited to 10,000 campaigns. This might sound like a lot, but I'll get to why it's not a lot in a little bit. And you have a limited number of ad groups in each campaign. I forget what it is. They might have even raised it to 1 million or something. So maybe that's not such a problem anymore. But certain number of keywords, certain number of negative keywords and campaign negative keywords. And these are all limitations that you have to keep in mind when deciding on a structure. And the other thing, and this one's a real big deal, is placement statistics. Currently, you can only get placement statistics on a campaign level. And so if you want to know your campaign statistics or your placement statistics, and you have a whole lot of keywords and a whole lot of ASINs in a campaign, your placement statistics are going to be useless because they're spread over so many things, and you don't know, okay, which ones are doing well, top of search, which ones aren't, and so forth. And then the other thing is that spend is really hard to control. Like, the more campaigns you have, the harder it is to control spend. And so, they have their portfolio, kind of a new thing, which I haven't really figured out a good way to use it. And you can put limits on individual campaigns, but if you have an ASIN, say a listing with multiple variants and you have multiple campaigns for this, you can't really set what's the limit of your daily spend for this listing because you have all these different campaigns or multiple campaigns. So you can set just for the individual campaigns. And yeah, I guess those are some of the things that we're trying to work with. What we want to do is we want to maximize our control, both over what's happening with the keywords, like how much spend, the impressions and bids, but also budgets we would like to control. We want to maximize how good the statistics are that we're getting back from Amazon, and we want to maximize the practicality of it. And so with all of that in mind, I don't know, I kind of, actually at this point, setting this background for what it is we're working on, maybe we can hand it off to Brent so I'm not talking for too long, and then I can get back to...
Well, Brent had some questions for you. I'm going to quickly say a couple of more hellos in the feed here, and then we'll get to your questions, Brent. So Richard Wren says, hello from China. Henry's here. Hi from Canada. Jamie's over from Australia. A late one there for you. Afternoon, gentlemen. Appreciate you guys as always. And Alan is here. Hey, gents. He says, right. Brent, what was the questions that you had for Ellis?
Yeah, sure. So I've not seen what a Databricks, account structure looks like firsthand, but I'd be really curious to do so now after the description you've just given.
Sure.
Because I think you look at it from a different perspective than we have. I'm not sure what the name of those two perspectives would be, but they are different for sure. And I do agree that having an ability to govern spend at a ASIN or maybe like product family level across a variety of campaigns would be extremely useful, because that's one of the biggest roadblocks that we encounter, that you encounter, would be allocation of spend. Like, let's say you have several campaigns for a single product, which is almost always the case, like for us. Across auto and manual, and then different types of manual. Maybe some of them are specifically for targeting by placement, like you mentioned, because you have to build out separate campaigns for that. Some of them are versus competitor terms or whatever. It'd be really cool to have the ability to do that. The portfolios thing you mentioned, we kind of use portfolios like tags, I would say. But the only difference with portfolio and like a true tagging system would be that portfolios are exclusive, right? They're one-to-one.
Right.
Whereas a tag, you could say, all right, these are all for this family, but one of these campaigns also falls under the tag of auto, or also falls under the tag of, we're trying on a new strategy with, top of search or something like that. So you can only put one portfolio against one campaign. Whereas the ideal situation would be having some sort of tagging system that would then propagate through the API too, so we could see it in third-party software, see it in bulk files, and then be able to organize along that axis. I think that would be actually super useful, and that would be a cool way to group budget too. Like maybe you could have a tag for budget, but now we're just starting to talk theoretical, like feature requests. If someone from Amazon is watching this, please add tags. Yeah, tagging would be great.
Right.
So then I guess my question would be, since you're not paying super close attention to the naming, then is the naming like human readable, or is it meant to be understood by the Databricks software and that alone?
It's human readable, but its purpose is for the software, because like I said, I rarely look at the campaign level, or we rarely look at campaign level information. And in contrast to what you had said, generally most of our clients are not interested in looking at PPC. And so it's just been handed off completely to us. And
I mean, that comes down to a couple of things. It's the size of the company as well. Is that a lot of the clients that we take on are generally 7 figures and above, and spending maybe 10K or more on ads a month, and they're in a business whereby you move from that phase of being an Amazon seller, like a one-man band or female band, if you like, and then you grow, and it's one of those, it's like, okay, I need to focus on the business and not in the business. So a lot of our clients operate at that level, but I imagine with you, Brent, there are clients that maybe not doing that, and they're very close to their PPC. You may have seen it where you have clients that almost live PPC via you. So they've done it really well themselves. They don't have the time to do it, but they love it. But they're always watching what you're doing and always asking those questions, because they take a real fascinated interest in it. But it really depends, I think, as companies grow and people get to that stage and go, you know what, my time now is to focus on the business, not in the business. I'll just hand it off. And that goes back to what Ellis is saying there.
Right, and there's two axes you can kind of deliver value as an agency. This is a bit off topic for this discussion, but I think it's like time and attention. So you're helping them reclaim time and attention, but also expertise. So if you're delivering along both those axes, then you're doing a really good job as an agency. But it's true, some of our clients know a lot about PPC. They've run their own for years. They have someone in the team who did it, maybe, who now has moved on to other PPC platforms because we're doing that for them. And they check in and they certainly know what's going on. When we give reports to them, they know questions to ask about certain metrics and they have their eye on stuff. And they love to be able to see the structure and dig into it on a Sunday afternoon if they so please. So having naming that kind of works for them is like is part of the requirement, I suppose.
Yeah, we had a conversation with a potential client this morning. It was quite an interesting one because a lot of people knew us as a company that can deal with hundreds of SKUs, right? Because that's not always easy to manage. And I said to Ellis, if we're going to go into this business, we need Blue Ocean. And at that time, that would have been perfect. But we've grown now as a company, and you move and adjust in different directions. We do work with smaller portfolios of SKUs and stuff. But I think one of the biggest things why people come over is what I call the intelligence work that you do, because you can outgrow your agency. And some agencies out there, they do their monthly reporting and they get to a stage where their knowledge tops out and the company carries on growing. And so they leave that agency and then they're looking for that extra 5 or 10%, which makes a difference if you're a 7 and 8 figure seller as well. In the feed here, quickly, Yanella's here. Good to see you. Love this topic. Question here: how long is statistic held before it becomes irrelevant or is drop off, or is there a no cut off and Amazon just keeps a record of everything?
What was the first part of the question?
How long is a statistic held for before it's irrelevant or it is dropped off?
Well, so through the API, the programming interface, Amazon will give us 60 days of back data and no more than that. Inside of the advertising console, you can get data back further than that for some things, but not for everything. And then the relevance of the statistics, it definitely drops as time goes on because the landscape changes. That is, once, like you might have a different number of stars now than you did 4 months ago or something. Yeah. And you're going to have different competitors who also have, maybe they've improved their images better than what it used to be. And so now they're more competitive against you. And so, the newer, the more recent the statistics are, the better, unless you're looking at something like seasonality, where, then it's really kind of difficult if you're looking at what happened last Mother's Day in order to predict the next Mother's Day. You have the issue of that may be the most relevant time to look at the statistics, but it was a year ago and the landscape's going to be very different this year.
Right. Or unexpected changes like, oh, let's compare Prime Day last year to Prime Day this year. Oh, wait, just kidding. There's no Prime Day, for instance. I would answer their question along the axis of quantity of spend. What's the amount of spend? Because obviously more spend directed properly is going to yield better data, but also recency. So like you just touched on, recency is really key. We do like year over year tracking for clients where we have the data, because we've been with PressIsOn for a long time, which is one of the major tool vendors out there. And we have our database of client information with them hooked up to another business intelligence software. So we're able to pull statistics very easily from that. And part of our naming system is also has like prefixes and appends for different like classifications of campaign types. Like for instance, we've recently been playing around a lot with Spanish keywords in the U.S. market because there's millions of Spanish speakers in the United States. And so we've had some really interesting results with that. So what we do is we aggregate that data together by having a consistent naming scheme. And then in that third-party software, the business intelligence software, we're able to look at that data in aggregate. So the campaign names do matter so that they properly match up with this software. But like taken individually, we can still tell like, oh, this is a Spanish keyword campaign test we're running here, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Should we slip back into naming structure? Not naming structure, the campaign structure, going to the next stages now. So let's have a countdown. What we've covered. We've covered the naming. Who wants to reel it off? Ellis?
Oh, actually, if we can go back to that naming, what you were just saying about the clear naming structure. So the way that we name our campaigns, might as well just throw it out, is we typically, there are a couple differences, but we typically first part is we have a label that refers to a set of closely related ASINs. So it might be one listing and all its variants is considered to be this group of closely related ASINs, or it could be that the client has multiple listings and they're all closely related, and so but whatever it is, it's a label to refer to a set of closely related ASINs. And then we typically have like the indicator that shows that it's a campaign from us. And then we have a general role label. Like, for example, if it's the exact match campaigns, it'll have a particular label. If it's broad match, it'll have another, it might be called broad. And then we have a further specification at the very end. So for example, if it's exact match, but it's only for top of search, then we have, a tag that indicates that. And so and if it's a keyword specific campaign, because we have these for the most important keywords, that's actually then we have that in there as well in quotes. And so that structure for the campaigns works for us, where we have these then 5 different components, possibly up to 5 different components. The group, the group of related products, the keyword, if it's a keyword specific campaign, the general role, and a further specifier for it. And then of course, the indicator that it's one of our campaigns.
Yeah. Well, this might lead into our next question anyway. What is the optimal structure for a new product launch? Does the Amazon algorithm favor a simpler versus a more complex structure?
Do you want to take that, Brent?
I wouldn't say it favors either one. I mean, what it favors is relevant keywords and search terms at bids that are going to get you in the marketplace and seen, if anything. I think that's more of the important consideration. I think if you use a structure that's, the distinction we like to make is like one ASIN per campaign, or like multiple ASINs or variations under a campaign is like the 2 main categories we kind of split it into. I don't think that Amazon is going to prefer either one of those setups. It's all about just having the right relevant traffic and driving it. Or in the case of like, let's say targeting competitors, the right relevant competitor ASINs to use product targeting. And same thing with sponsored brands, a nice relevant keyword set and associated headline that really matches with what people are searching. I'm not sure if structure has much to play with that. What do you think, Ellis?
The only thing I've seen, and I hate the fact that I've seen this because I wish it weren't true.
I wish you could unsee it.
is we have seen cases where Amazon seems to prefer an ad group having multiple SKUs in it. And I hate that fact because it means you have much less control and much worse statistics. And so we never do it, but there have been rare cases where we've seen that it really does seem to be the case. So what we think is happening there is that something in Amazon's algorithm will prefer keywords that it's seen to be successful. So the more activity that's been on that keyword it considers good activity, the more it will kind of prefer showing that, or the better it'll rank in the bid, the auction scoring. And so sometimes if you have a bunch of SKUs in one ad group, Amazon will be willing to throw more impressions at it, giving it stronger, some stronger score. But you just can't use that, and so it's unfortunate. We've struggled with that on a few occasions, trying to move from clients' original structure where they had a bunch of SKUs in one ad group to one where we can, actually control what's going on and manage the statistics. But it's rarely the case but it sometimes.
Cool. Moving it slightly on. What about for people that are listening? If you've got, like we've said before, we've dealt with campaigns with hundreds of SKUs. Some people find that overwhelming, but it's understanding what to advertise and how to structure them, and then it goes into a long story about shared keywords and cannibalization and how to manage all that stuff. I think some people get caught in, you've got 1,000 SKUs, you're not necessarily going to advertise them on them all. You're going to look at their ratings, you're going to look at their price points. There's all these different things you look at. If you were to take on account, Ellis, and you see someone with 1,000 SKUs, what are the quick 80/20s you do to break that down to get a cohesive amount of SKUs to work with?
Well, looking at the search terms, you'd look through what are the search terms that are making an impact. I mean, starting with the ones that are making the most impact, and then from there look at which ASINs are performing well or generating the sales without an excessive ACoS under those keywords, and then we mark those keywords as relevant for those ASINs, and so through this process, you get a good starting basis. You just then go through the list from the most important on down for, however much time you want to invest for, that first phase, and then you let that run and you reevaluate again. Sounds good.
Brent, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, I think our approach yet again differs slightly, but has the same kind of core outcome or objective. And in this circumstance, it's kind of like a retail readiness check. So let's look at the entire catalog. Let's have a discussion with the client about what their inventory situation is. Some clients right now are having excellent sales as COVID, some parts of the US kind of lifts and changes. And their sales are like really on the up and up. However, now they're running into some inventory problems. So maybe it's not the right time to really push, even if we can get 15% ACoS and get that all day till the cows come home. Retail readiness would be another consideration. So is the star rating really good? Are the images fantastic? Is it positioned well in the market compared to competitors? And then we generate that kind of list and work our way down. Usually we work with accounts that have existing data. So we do a similar kind of examination. What's the search term landscape in this account right now? And what could it be? Because typically an under-optimized or not sufficiently grown account has a much smaller search term footprint than it probably should. So a part of our job is to continue to expand and grow that.
Makes sense. Product groups, we didn't really establish that. Ellis, do you want to give an example of product groups, i.e. a bin bag versus a handbag, and how groups can be broken down and structured?
What we're looking for in these, when we're grouping the ASINs, is how substantially similar should the keyword performance be. And if we think that for the most part, the keywords should perform very similarly on these different ASINs, or I shouldn't say necessarily perform, the relevant ASINs should be substantially similar. Then we generally group them together, and among those, as you kind of indicated or touched on earlier, we might then exclude actually advertising on the ASINs with bad ratings, or the higher priced ones or something like that. And then what we often find, though, is that there is a hierarchy to these groups. So you might have something like, what were the two different bags, bean bags and handbags?
Yeah, I use it like a rubbish bag, like a black bag, bin bag. Okay. Yeah, versus a handbag. Both are bags, but obviously utilize completely different actions.
Yeah. Okay. In that case, we just have them in, the key phrases are so different. We definitely have them in different groups, and there wouldn't be any overlap in keywords. So it would be just the same as if they didn't have,
Yeah, I was just trying to give an example, bags, and there's a plethora of black bags, but then eventually, like I gave you two extremes from each other,
Right.
but then you've got an array of different women's styled handbags, larger bags, smaller bags, and it's just working out how do you manage these and put them in there so they're cohesive, and the amount of search terms they're sharing across, and the amount of the campaigns that should be built. Is there anything we've missed here in terms of structure? I think we've covered quite a bit, haven't we?
One last thing I'd like to actually echo that Ellis said earlier. I think the biggest problem, besides the more finely tuned budget allocation that we all want with Amazon advertising, would be the fact that we don't have any ability to set the kind of rotation we want for a, let's say, a variation in a ad group. So a pretty common structure for us, which is actually quite counter to you guys, would be to have multiple products in a ad group. But the main condition, since they all flow from the search term ecosystem and structure, that's kind of how we think about it. The structure of the campaign must be determined by the search term ecosystem and the structure. So if we have, like let's say shoes, like running shoes, we're going to have the red and the green one, both in that ad group for running shoes. But when it comes to red and green colors, those keywords are going to be in separate ad groups where it's only going to direct traffic to the red or only direct traffic to the green. So that's going to require additional ad groups inside of that campaign, or different campaigns depending on what the budgetary requirement is. But at this time, we don't have a way to say, all right, send 50% of the traffic to the red one and 50% of the traffic to the green one. There's no setting at all for that. And I think that's probably one of the biggest limitations that exists at Amazon's platform currently. Because if you go to Google, you can say, all right, I want you to weight this one 70% and the other one 30%. Because this is the big seller, for instance, and you can even run tests on Google. It'll let them duke it out random, and then it'll pick a winner, for instance. Can't do any of that stuff with Amazon. So this is like a major limitation that's hamstrung us, third-party software, everybody in the ecosystem, not just like us. Big sellers, of course, have to deal with the same problem.
Yeah. Cool. Any final words from you, Ellis, before we go?
Well, let's see.
We missed anything off the list?
So there are a couple points that I hadn't looked at. We haven't looked at yet, but I don't know. Time. How's the time?
We're good for time.
Okay. So one of the things that I mentioned here is that, in some sense, that the simplest campaign structure would be to have one campaign for every ASIN and keyword combination. And it would be complex in the sense that you would have a lot of campaigns, but you would then never have to think about campaign structure. And if you want it to be a top of search, okay, it's one campaign for the top of search. If it's an auto, it's one campaign for the auto. And so that would make it really simple in terms of structure. And we have a client who does things this way, but the problem is it's not scalable because of this 10,000 campaign limit.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you have 100 ASINs and each of the ASINs has, say, 100 keywords, or let's say each of the ASINs has 20 keywords, and you have, for various reasons, say 5 campaigns for each thing, with autos and broads and product attribute targeting and whatever else, then you're already at the 10,000 campaign limit. And so we can't do that, unfortunately. I'd love to do it that way. It would simplify a lot of things computationally. And it would give you the best control and the best statistics. When I say the best control, you'd have the least control in terms of budgets, but you'd have the most control in terms of how much are you spending on each keyword, and what are your bids on each keyword and stuff like this. And so, yeah, but we can't do that because it's not scalable once you get to have a larger number of
out. Yeah.
So instead, what we do is we group the ASINs, the closely related ASINs together, as I was talking about, and then we have 3 exact match campaigns for these. That's to get the 3 different placements. We have 4 auto campaigns and 4 broad match campaigns. And these are campaigns that are running at different levels of aggressiveness. And so they have different negative terms in them as well. And we have, let's see, there's the 3, the 4, the 4. And then for the most important keywords, we always have individual keyword campaigns for the ASIN as well, so that we can get the top of search statistics for the most important keywords. So that's a lot of campaigns, altogether. That's what, like, if you have no individual keywords, I mean, that's already 11 campaigns. Mm-hmm. And then as you add in, you pick the most important keywords, it gets to be more. And yeah, but that works well for us, with the exception that it makes it more difficult to control spend. That said, only 20%, maybe even less of our clients try to limit ad spend. So for the vast majority of them, it's just spend as much as you want, as long as it's basically at our ACoS target for the different products.
Si's mentioned here, you guys are like aliens. To plebs like me, PPC is some kind of a black art. Thank God you guys exist. I've got another question here. If budget is no concern, is it better to start with lots of relevant keywords in the campaign and funnel them down to the few most relevant, or start with fewer keywords and grow the funnel to more keywords?
Do you want to go first, Brent?
Yeah, I mean, if budget is no concern, I would say you want to start with broad match keywords and make sure they're relevant. You don't want to be throwing garbage in there, but start with a pretty large set. And as you search term mine those out of there, continue to grow that campaign and other campaigns along different themes. If you want to group them thematically or group them by product attribute targeting. So I would say, the old school technique of what I guess we would call like keyword dumping is not really the best move anymore. Like, don't go into Helium 10 and just scrape like 700 keywords and just like don't check them and go, all right, looks good, we'll start with that. You're going to end up in a world of pain, wasting a lot of money on some of these things. You need to, hand pick all the keywords. I would suggest, take the time to comb through that. Even if it takes 45 minutes or an hour, you're going to save yourself hundreds of dollars if you're spending a lot of money. Like, what's your time worth? What's the time of someone on your team worth? It's probably acceptable to do that. That would be my first level recommendation.
Cool. Any words?
That's great. That's almost exactly how we would go about it too. One of the things that I really make a lot of use of, really focus on, are the brand analytics reports. And so there I would just additionally suggest, when you're looking through the keywords that you're interested in using, check them against brand analytics. And if they're not on there, I wouldn't even use them for exact match campaigns, but use them as exact match. And then the ones that are on there, you can also, if they seem relevant, same kind of checks that Brent was saying, if they seem relevant, you can do broad match on them as well and see what additional good long tail keywords you get out of it. Be my general approach. Sometimes we put in keywords in a launch campaign that aren't in brand analytics, but we avoid doing too much of that.
Cool. I think we've covered a lot of good stuff there. Any parting words before we disappear?
Take care.
I'll just say one more thing, which is our structure really emphasizes search term duplication and isolation of search terms, because we want to be able to concentrate the spend in as few places as possible to have the best data for it. And we can do that just from structure, but also from Presses On has a really nice feature called the search term chart, actually. Not to plug them too much, but like you can see where a search term has appeared in different campaigns across time. And it'll show you how the impressions have, waned in one and waxed in the other, and then where the spend is going. So try to cut down on search term duplication. That's one of our core tenets of our management, I would say.
Yeah, that's a great thing. Like for example, if you are doing these broad match campaigns, just going back to the launch, what it makes, it's best practice, at least I think so, to negative exact match on the keywords. So let's say it's a, black microphone. And so if you have a broad match on black microphone and you have your exact match broad microphone in another campaign, put black microphone as an exact negative match in the broad match campaign.
So negatives play traffic police, not only against irrelevant keywords, but direction of search term exposure. Yeah, that's an important concept. I think is a bit more high level, but anyone can implement.
Yep.
Cool. We've got a couple more here. Jacob says, hello, gents. Good to see you. Loving the advice. Richard Wren, this 37-minute conversation is what makes me think AI still has a long way to go before they beat us, the humankind. And finally here, in the bid of your broad and exact campaigns, both are the same. Who wins?
It's arbitrary.
It's arbitrary. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It doesn't actually. What's crazy is even if you use tools to determine where it's showing up, where the search term is actually getting impressions, even if you say, you know what, I'm going to do staggered bids and exact match is going to have a higher bid, that does not necessarily mean that's going to be the one that gets the lion's share of impressions. It still will go to broad, it'll go to phrase, it'll go to auto if you don't have it. It's all over the place. So this is why the negatives are important in understanding where your search term exposure is. Cool.
All right, Brent, what's the best way people can reach you if they want to get your advice or work with you?
Yeah, sure. amzpathfinder.com. We just had a service that sped up our website. So our load time is almost under a second now, up from 3 seconds. So you'll be able to get to us a little bit faster. Yeah. And just hello at AMZ Pathfinder will also go to me if you want to shoot an email over. I'm available.
Sounds good. If you need to reach us, it's danny@databrill.com. We'll be back again tomorrow. Thank you, gents, for joining us. Thank you for all your questions in the feed. Stay safe. I was going to say stay home, but a lot of people are being let out now. Stay safe. Look after your families. I'll be back here tomorrow, 4 p.m. BST. Take care.
And Brent, if you want to talk about, take a look at our structure.